Chuck Olsen from the Uptake here with Minneapolis Mayor R.T. Rybak at Netroots Nation. Well, first I want to ask you, you told me about a new industry. I didn't realize we had a new export here in Minnesota.
Well, I was telling people that we have this wonderful new export. We take our craziest politicians and export them to other places, Bachman, Palenti, and we keep the really good ones. So Ellison, Walls, McCollum, Franken, Klobuchar, etc. And I think that's a good idea. Keep the best politicians and let the other ones be shared with the rest of the country.
Well, listen, we got to revive this economy, so if we can export the crazy. So tell me about the Minneapolis Promise.
Well, I'm glad you asked, and I'm glad that reporter from The Economist just asked, and I'm glad that, that really got such a great response here at Netroots Nation. Basically, I said that we're proving what the Statue of Liberty is here in Minneapolis, that this city has been about welcoming immigrants. So Center for Victims of Torture, American Refugee Committee, I could go on and on. All these great groups have led to a disproportionate number of immigrants here. Well, that has challenges, there's no doubt about it, but it also means that our population is more globally competent than any that we've ever had. They speak 100 languages, they come from all over the world. Any kid, no matter where they're from, who's sitting next to them, knows how to cross a cultural boundary. So the Minneapolis Promise says this: we're going to get those kids into our businesses and make us more competitive. So step one is our career centers, privately funded through Achieve Minneapolis. Step two is our Step Up Summer Job Program. A couple thousand kids this summer, 80% kids of color. Step three are our access to college programs, the Power Review at MCTC, the Founders Program at the U. So we put thousands of kids, as I said, 80% kids of color, speaking multiple languages through this whole system. And now we have a far more globally competent workforce than we've ever had. Graduation rates during that time have gone up by double digits in Minneapolis schools. I go into every ninth grade, as I have for 5 years, and tell these kids you're the most valuable generation we've ever had, but you got to step up and be part of the Minneapolis Promise. And I think it's a great story that's working here.
Yeah, we have a great strength in our diversity here. Let me jump over to another topic that justifiably probably won't go away for a while. It's North Minneapolis and the tornado. I think I actually saw you on the day maybe you found out that we weren't getting that FEMA funding, which must have been really disappointing. Can you talk about what still could be happening there? And wasn't it kind of interesting that they said we did such a good job responding with volunteers that was a reason they gave for not giving the federal aid?
Yeah, I think really, as I've learned about this, there's a really tough formula for FEMA for individuals to get aid. Wadena, for instance, which got just devastated a couple of years ago, didn't get the aid. We didn't get the aid. Most other places don't. We got the public aid, meaning the sidewalks that were torn up and the infrastructure can get replaced. I'm thinking a lot about people now, and so I'm obviously disappointed. But the good news is the Obama White House called. They invited us in. I'm going to be there Monday. We're going to go through a panoply of federal opportunities and try to figure out other ways to get money to people. Because of Katrina especially, I think people think FEMA, FEMA, FEMA. There are lots of ways to get help to people. We're going to have to take many different strategies. We have to figure out ways to ground homeowners who were maybe just hanging on beforehand and now took a step back. We're going to have to help renters who may have a problem landlord. We're going to have to keep kids who are moving from place to place grounded in their school. There's a lot of human need in all of this, and there's not one way of doing it, but we spent much of the day mapping out what our ask will be federally. I don't expect to walk out of the White House Monday with a check. I do expect that they'll deliver on what they promised, which is to sit down and kind of map out a few different federal routes. We're going to need state help, and the state's been phenomenally helpful so far. County help, the city help, but all these volunteers have been amazing.
Well, and that's something that we've actually been kind of researching and documenting at the Uptake with a Bush grant we have. We're focusing on North Minneapolis. We're looking for people that are sort of the innovative solution makers, people maybe doing new things. There's kind of new coalitions coming together of nonprofits. Who are you seeing in the community that really stands out as sort of being innovative and helping North Minneapolis recover?
There are a tremendous number of groups that have either emerged out of this or are getting better, but one of the things that I think is the biggest piece of progress that people are working together in North Minneapolis. I mean, I work in North Minneapolis a lot. There are phenomenal people with tremendous capacity, but it has not always been the easiest place to work, frankly. There are a lot of folks who sometimes, have this turf or that turf. All of that has gone away in these last couple weeks. I mean, everybody's got their stuff. We've all got our baggage, but everybody's just sort of set it aside, and we've lowered our heads and are working, and it's so powerful to see people who've often been at odds with each other just saying, okay, it's about those people. So that, if we can cross that bridge, man, that's a lot. I think, some of the things that I've loved is that there's been a community group that's come together with a group of community leaders and nonprofits who are really articulating where they feel the community wants to go. I had a great meeting with them this afternoon, which is part of a series of meetings. We've internally had an amazing group of people who just haven't slept a whole lot in a few weeks. And we are having vision meetings and implementation meetings. But I think more than anything else, the thing that's really happening is at a real local level, neighbors looking at neighbors, there are so many great stories.
Well, and we hope to find some of those stories, actually.
Can I tell you one that just sticks with me through all of this stuff? I've seen so many great things, but it was right after the tornado hit. And I think it was at like about 34th and Lyndale. And over on the right was this car that had a tree on it, and there were ambulances all around, and we pretty much knew that somebody had died there. And there were lines down, and it smelled like gas, and trees everywhere, and it was pretty much looked like the end of the world. And I see this woman walking down the street, this elderly white woman walking down the street in almost a house coat with what appeared to be a pretty severely handicapped girl in her wheelchair. It's raining on them. I said, "What are you doing out here?" And she said, "Well, there's gas leaking, and I know I need to get out of my house, but I don't know what to do." So in the middle of all this, I take the wheelchair, we go down this little hill, I get to the corner, see a porch, and I pull them all up to the porch and knock on the door and say to the woman who lives there, "Can they stay on your porch till it stops raining?" And the woman walks out and says, "No, they will not be on my porch." And I thought, geez, here's this elderly white woman, this young African-American woman, and the African-American woman who lived in the house said, "She won't stay on my porch. I want her in my living room." She brought her in, opened the door, gave her food, and, it was one of those things that has stuck with me throughout all of this, because all the tough stuff you hear, that's repeated over and over again. I saw that when we were all out, lifting tar paper and shingles and trees out of backyards, and this woman walks out of her house that she's owned for 20 years and wasn't sure how she was going to clean it up, and she just started crying and hugging people. And, this is powerful to me, and it's really tough there. It's worse than anything I've seen here, but it's also really cool.
Those are powerful stories. I interviewed Peter Kerr, the guy who started the Facebook page, and that's an interesting story too, where he managed to be getting insulin to people using this Facebook page, and kind of old school social networking meets new school social networking. You're talking about the North Community Response Team. I filmed one of their meetings and was absolutely fascinated, because they said it was like Al Flowers, NAACP, Lewis King from Summit Academy, and they were saying, we're usually at odds with each other, but we're coming together, and a lot of nonprofits sitting around the table that don't normally sit at the same table together. So yeah, it really seems like there is a lot of real need and needs that need to be addressed, but there's also a lot of hope and collaboration happening. So
yeah, and it's the other thing is we're going to be at this for a while, so I really am urging / begging people to be ready for a summer in which Rebuilding Together, Urban Homeworks, Habitat, we're going to be doing things pretty much every weekend, and we'd love it if different communities would get their team together to work on a house. I'm in the Regional Mayors Association. We sort of talked like maybe one Saturday, each of our different cities would get a group, maybe different faith communities would do that. Maybe you guys could take a Saturday.
We actually decided we don't want to be just passive documenters. We want to be part of the solution. So go ahead and plug us into that.
Okay, why don't I sign you up for next Saturday? Liz Winstead is going to be out there with you.
Okay, we've been put to work, folks, here at the Uptake. Oliver, next Saturday. All right, Mayor. Well, thanks for spending some time with us, and have a good time at Netroots.
Love the Uptake. Love Netroots. Isn't this cool to have these guys in town?
This is great.
Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks, yeah.